So, want to learn a new language?
Always a good goal.
We're diving into Benny Lewis's book, Fluent in 3 months.
Oh, cool.
See if his unconventional approach can really get you speaking confidently in, well,
Just 3 months.
yeah, 3 months.
It's a bold claim for sure.
It is.
But Benny's upfront about it. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't like a super language whiz in school or anything.
Right.
Yet now he speaks over a dozen languages fluently.
That's what got me hooked on the book. It's like he flips the whole language learning thing on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always hear, oh, kids are like sponges.
Right, total natural.
And adults, well, we're stuck struggling with.
Conjugating verbs.
Exactly.
It's almost like we're programmed to believe that. You know?
I know.
Yeah.
But then Benny debunks this whole myth.
Oh, yeah.
He makes this point.
Okay.
You already understand how communication works.
Uh-huh.
I mean, in your native language,
Right.
you've got this huge vocabulary.
Yeah.
And you know how to learn strategically.
Sure.
Those are huge advantages over kids.
They really are.
Then there's this whole language gene thing, right?
Gifted few.
Yeah. Some folks just, like, pick up languages easily.
While the rest of us, Benny tackles that myth too, head on.
I was hoping he would.
He says most people worldwide actually speak more than one language.
That's a good point.
It's not about genes, it's more about...
Exposure.
Yeah, and the chances you had to learn.
Okay.
You probably have multilingual ancestors somewhere in your family tree.
Wow, you're right.
Yeah,
But let's be real for a second.
sure.
Learning a language takes,
Time.
and lots of us are juggling work, family.
Life.
Yeah.
And Benny gets that. His point isn't about having tons of free time.
Oh, yeah.
It's about making the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
He's got these tips for fitting language practice into your day.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Even just 5 minutes here and there.
Okay.
He learned Arabic while in Brazil. Think about that. It's about finding those little bits of time and using them well. Like even listening to a podcast on your dog walk.
Oh, yeah.
That's exposure to the language.
true. But what really got me was his whole speak from day one idea.
Ah, right from the start.
Isn't that kind of scary, especially if you're just starting out?
I can see that.
Like, imagine fumbling through a conversation with a native speaker.
Right away.
Yeah, on day one.
That's where Benny's approach is clever.
How so?
He actually says those early messy conversations are good.
Really?
He's even got a name for it, contextees.
Contextees. I like that.
Ah.
But what's it mean?
Basically using context clues and what you already know to figure things out,
Okay.
even if you don't get every single word.
So it's not about being perfect.
Not at all. The goal is to communicate.
Got it.
Get your message across, even if it's a bit jumbled.
Makes sense.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You'll wobble, maybe fall a few times.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But with practice,
Yeah.
you gain confidence and fluency.
So it's more about jumping in and figuring it out as you go,
Yeah, exactly.
rather than waiting till you feel ready.
Exactly.
But how do you even start those first conversations
Hmm.
when you barely know any words?
Good question. Benny says, first, get a few basic phrases
Huh?
from a phrase book or a language app. There are tons.
Right.
And don't be afraid to use notes or even a dictionary.
During a conversation.
It's not cheating, it's being resourceful.
True. So it's about being okay with not being perfect at first
Yeah.
and using the tools you have.
And remember, those early conversations,
Yeah.
they're as much about building confidence as they are about practicing.
I like that.
The more you do it,
Yeah.
the easier it gets.
So true.
Oh, and we can't forget about Benny's memory tricks.
Oh, right. Those are good.
He's all about making it fun, you know?
Yeah, ditching the boring memorization
No more
and
flashcards.
making it a game.
He uses, like, vivid images, humor, even storytelling.
To remember words.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
make these crazy associations.
Give me an example.
Okay, so for the French word gare,
Gar.
which means train station,
Okay.
he pictures Garfield the cat running like mad through a train station,
Oh, I get it.
trying to catch a train to like a lasagna eating contest.
Uh-huh. That's great. I will forget that one.
It's so much better than just saying gar, gar, gar.
Right. So boring.
He taps into how our brains actually work, you know?
It makes sense we remember things better when they're tied to
Emotions.
sensory stuff.
Or just like funny things.
Exactly. And he talks about spaced repetition systems.
Oh, like Anki.
Yes. That's a good one.
I've heard of that.
It's a flashcard system, but it uses these algorithms
Fancy.
to figure out the best time to review words.
Based on, like, how well you remember them.
Exactly. So you're not just wasting time with cards you already know.
That's smart.
Technology can be a big help in language learning. It can. Okay, so we've talked about getting started, but what does being fluent actually mean?
Well, Benny defines it as hitting a B2 level on the CFRL scale.
CEFRL.
It's like a framework they use to describe how good you are at a language.
B2 sounds kind of technical, though. What's that in real life?
Think of it as being able to handle everyday conversations
Okay.
without too much effort, like
Yeah.
talking about your hobbies, sharing your opinions,
Yeah.
understanding the news, even traveling without needing a dictionary all the time.
So it's more about being able to communicate,
Yeah, in most situations.
not necessarily being an expert.
Exactly. Benny also points out that fluency is like a spectrum.
Okay.
It's not just a finish line you cross.
Always room for improvement.
Right. But he does make a distinction between fluency and mastery.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Mastery is like a deeper level.
Well, like a native speaker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Benny himself, who speaks over a dozen languages,
Wow, still amazing.
he's definitely aiming for mastery.
Makes sense.
He even calls himself a polyglot,
Which just means...
someone who speaks many languages.
Right, right. So for those of us who want to go beyond just fluency,
To that mastery level,
what are some tips?
Benny really emphasizes immersion. Surround yourself with the language. Books, movies, music, even podcasts.
Oh, like us?
And he says, revisit grammar after you have that conversational base.
Interesting. I thought grammar was like step one.
He thinks studying it too early can be overwhelming, especially when you're starting out.
I see. It can feel like a lot.
But once you can communicate a bit,
Yeah.
grammar becomes more like a puzzle to solve.
Ah, that's a good way to put it.
You see the patterns, the logic of the language. He makes an analogy about looking at a puzzle.
Oh.
When you only have a few pieces, it's hard to see the whole picture.
Right.
But as you get more pieces in place, those last few suddenly make sense.
They complete the image.
Exactly. And for mastery, Benny's a fan of official language exams.
Oh, those can be tough.
They help you see where you need to improve.
Provide some structure.
So it's an ongoing journey, refining your skills.
I like that. He also talked to a hyper-polyglot.
Oh, wow. Even more languages.
This guy, Richard Simcott, spoke tons of languages.
What did he say?
One big thing was to focus on one language at a time.
Until you're comfortable.
Yeah, then move to the next one.
That makes sense. Juggling too many at once would be...
Confusing.
Richard also says, surround yourself with the language as much as possible.
Media, conversations, the whole 9 yards.
Now, what about mixing up languages?
Oh, yeah. I've heard that's a problem for people who speak a lot of them.
Benny has some tricks for that.
I bet he does.
He says he sees each language as having its own personality,
Okay.
and he tries to embody that personality when he speaks.
So it's like different mental compartments.
Yeah. He also likes learning a new language through another language.
Not always going back to his native tongue.
It forces him to think differently, he says.
And it connects the languages more directly, I guess.
It's a good reminder that there's no one right way to learn,
Find what works for you.
and be willing to try new things.
Now, one thing people always bring up is accents.
Oh, that can be tricky.
Can you really sound like a native if you learn later in life?
That's a question a lot of learners struggle with.
What does Benny say about that? Yeah, it can feel like this big thing to get over.
Benny knows it's tough, but not impossible. He's got this story about when he was in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
He could have conversations in Arabic, no problem, but people kept switching to English with him.
Like defaulting back to it?
Yeah. So he tried something different.
Okay, what'd he do?
He changed up his look, to blend in more.
Like a makeover?
Kinda. He grew out his facial hair,
Okay.
traded his Western sneakers for more traditional shoes,
I'm picturing it.
even adjusted how he walked, his posture to match the locals.
Wow, so just by looking the part,
Yeah.
people started speaking Arabic to him.
It's amazing, right? It shows how important that nonverbal stuff is.
Like body language.
All of it. Cultural cues, how we present ourselves.
That's not just about the words.
It's this whole package.
That's a great point. It makes you realize language learning is more than just,
Memorizing words.
it's connecting with a whole culture.
Deeper level, for sure.
But okay, back to accents for a second.
Right.
Any tips for actually reducing your accent?
Benny says, focus on the sounds that are tricky in that specific language.
The ones that trip you up.
YouTube is great for finding pronunciation videos.
Oh, yeah, lots of those.
And of course, working with a native speaker is awesome.
You can catch the little things you miss.
Exactly. But Benny also says having an accent,
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you're not fluent.
that's reassuring.
It's about finding that balance, being accurate, but also embracing.
Your own way of speaking.
Sometimes an accent even adds to your charm.
It can make you memorable.
For sure.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to Benny's main message,
Action.
he wants people to stop making excuses and just start.
Don't wait for the perfect time.
You don't need all the fancy resources.
Even a few minutes a day.
Can make a huge difference.
He reminds us that it's a journey.
Not just a destination.
There'll be challenges along the way,
Definitely.
but celebrate those small wins.
Yes. And don't lose sight of the joy of connecting with other cultures.
It's so rewarding. I love how Benny quotes that Chinese proverb.
Which one?
Teachers open the door, you enter by yourself.
Deep.
It means we're responsible for our own learning.
We have to be active in the process.
So, are you ready to start your own language adventure?
I hope so.
Benny leaves us with this thought, inspired by a quote about trees.
Okay.
The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Love that.
Meaning there's no better time than now.
So what language will you start learning today?
We want to hear from you. Share your goals, your struggles, your successes.
Everything.
Let's keep this conversation going, inspire each other.
To embrace the adventure of language learning.
Until next time, happy language learning.